Howdy y'all, and welcome back to FUBAR, a regular series from the Texas Signal that explores just how the right wing in Texas can be. In military parlance, FUBAR stands for up beyond all recognition, which is, well, a pretty accurate way to describe what's happening in our country right now. We've already talked to you about Dan Patrick's radical plan to raise taxes on every single Texan, Jonathan Stickland's general yuck factor, and Tony Tinderholt's insane idea to give every woman who has an abortion and the doctor who performed it the death penalty. But this week we're talking about someone who actually isn't a Texan, and who is, in fact, the opposite of everything we stand for, President Donald Trump. We've been working on this episode for a while, but every time we think we're done, he does something else so mind-bogglingly stupid, we need to reset for a moment. This is a man who basically kicked off his presidential campaign calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals, and kicked off his presidency by trying to ban Muslims from entering the country. A president who withstood more scandals in 6 months than most of his predecessors did in entire terms, only to be faced with one of the most horrific acts of violence in the history of our nation, Charlottesville. In the face of white nationalists wantonly injuring and killing Americans in the street, the president had this to say.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Thus continuing a pattern of open racism and hatred from our commander-in-chief that led, in part, to Democrats thumping on Republicans in the 2018 midterm elections, taking back the majority in the House. The electoral swing was felt most acutely in Texas, where Democrats took back 12 seats in the state house, picked up congressional seats long held by Republicans, and Beto O'Rourke came within just a couple of points of beating alleged Zodiac killer Ted Cruz, putting the Donald and his GOP brethren on defense. On serious defense, Trump's electoral prospects have gotten so bad he's even routinely losing Texas in public opinion polling. That won't surprise our frequent viewers who have known Texas as a swing state for a long time, but a lot of people in the DC bubble just got the memo. I mean, look at the math, folks. Trump is spending more on digital ads in Texas than in any other state, even Florida, a permanent battleground state central to his electoral strategy in 2020. And he loses Texas in multiple recent polls, including to Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders, even Beto O'Rourke. 5 other candidates have been within the margin of error against Trump, signaling he's in deep shit. He's one of the only presidents in American history to never log an approval rating above 50%. Seriously, knowing that he might be the Republican that finally loses Texas to the Democrats and delivers them the White House, Trump has done what he's always done. He's tripled down on his racist, hateful rhetoric and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on digital ads trying to scare voters about immigration. And then, El Paso happened. And then Dayton happened. For the 51st and 52nd time since Trump has taken office, there were tragic mass shootings in our country. What made the El Paso massacre so much more jarring and senseless were the racial motivations of the shooter, who drove 10 hours to open fire in a Walmart intent to stop the Hispanic invasion of Texas that Donald Trump has warned about. But what makes our response so different is our willingness to speak out and fight back.
He's been calling Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals. I don't know, like, members of the press, what the f***? Hold on a second. You know, it's these questions that you know the answers to. I mean, connect the dots about what he's been doing in this country. He's not tolerating racism, he's promoting racism. He's not tolerating violence, he's inciting racism and violence in this country.
Trump's response was to start a Twitter fight with Beto over his name. Trump might say he's not a white supremacist, but then he goes and says things like,
but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
And has the nerve to show up in El Paso, a city he still owes over $500,000 for his last rally in the city. And so, President Trump, for your willingness to incite racism and hate, your inability to condemn white nationalists for their acts of terror that they commit, and your general shamelessness, we are inducting you into the FUBAR Hall of Shame. You don't seem too surprised to be here. This is the Texas Signal, signing off.